The RTX 5060 laptop is supposed to be the sweet spot for mobile gaming in 2026. Mid-range price, next-gen architecture, 8GB VRAM. But 007 First Light doesn't care. And you'll know exactly why. Today we are running the chip across 1080p, 1440p, averages, 1% lows, frame pacing, VRAM headroom, and exactly where this GPU taps out. No fluff, let's get into it. Starting at 1080p high with DLAA, no upscaling, no frame generation, just the raw GPU doing the work. And straight away the 5060 is under pressure. We are averaging mid 50s to around 60 FPS with 1% lows sitting in the mid 30s to low 40s. So even at 1080p high DLAA, this card cannot hold a locked 60 FPS in this game. Look at the frame times. It's not a disaster, but it's not clean either. There's variance there. So this is the ceiling at 1080p DLAA high settings. The question is now whether we can stabilize things closer to 60 FPS without sacrificing much visual quality. So let's switch DLAA out for DLSS quality at 1080p. Honestly, the visuals barely change, and I want to say that clearly because I think 1080p actually looks really good in this game. The details hold up well at this resolution, and DLSS quality is not hurting you here, but even the expected uplift in frame rates is also very small. So this is probably Model M, which is heavier than DLSS 4 Model K. Performance wise, we are now averaging around 61 FPS. VRAM sitting at about 7 GB, and while we still get occasional dips into the high 50s in heavy scenes, the overall experience is noticeably more stable. 1% lows are mostly holding above 40 FPS now. This is a meaningful improvement, 1080p high DLSS quality. That's your clean baseline on this card. Now here's where things get interesting. I wanted to see what Ultra settings does and if it is viable at 1080p with some kind of upscaling. So I switched from high to Ultra textures. Even kept DLSS balance just in case, 1080p. And I didn't even load into the scene. I was still in the menu, and as soon as I touched the shadows, 9 FPS. The game couldn't render a static menu screen with Ultra textures loaded on 8GB VRAM. That's not a demanding scene killing your frame rates. That's the memory wall hitting before the game even starts. So Ultra textures is a hard no on this card. But it gets worse. When I switched back to high textures, the game started at 70 FPS. Remember, we are still at DLSS balance. It's the same session. Looked fine. Then it started dropping. 60 FPS, then 50s, then 40s, and 30s. Absolute slideshow. Then I realized that I'd forgotten to turn on Ultra shadows back to high. So Ultra quality shadows in this game, depending on the location, is extremely taxing. So you should avoid that at all costs. Alright, stepping up to 1440p, high settings, DLSS quality. In the intro scene, the game looks genuinely impressive at 1440p. I'll give it that. But again, the performance sits in the mid 40s for most of it. Now later when we move to the club scene, it's consistently low 50s at 1440p high DLSS balance. I was expecting at least mid to high 50s across the board. You know what we call the playable territory, even though it's not locking to 60 FPS at 1440p with DLSS balance. Maybe, but that's just asking a bit too much for this game. It's technically playable, but it doesn't feel like a comfortable experience on the laptop. So at the moment 1440p is out, so we'll get back to 1080p and find where the card actually lives. Now DLSS balanced at 1080p in the same club scene puts us in the mid 70s to 80s. That's already a big shift. Now enable frame generation on top of that. We are above 100 FPS, hitting 120 FPS every now and then. It's smooth, it's responsive, and for a single player game on a keyboard and mouse, the latency is completely fine. One thing I will flag though, with frame generation enabled at 1080p DLSS balance, There is a ghosting effect around Bond's hair. On fast camera pans, it's noticeable on the boundaries. It doesn't ruin the experience, but it's there. Move up to DLSS quality instead of balance, keep the frame generation on. You're now sitting at around 90 FPS and the hair ghosting cleans up significantly. The image is sharper, the frame times are flat, and 90 FPS on a mid-gen laptop in a brand new AAA title is honestly where you want to be. Check the frame time graphs. FrameGen is doing its job cleanly here, and you can see the base FPS on the top left corner with Steam overlay. This is the configuration I'd go for. So here's the actual verdict. Stay at 1080p, high textures, not ultra. That's non-negotiable on 8GB or less. DLSS quality with frame generation gives you around 90 FPS, clean image, smooth experience. If you want to push above 100 and can live with slightly more ghosting on Bond's hair, DLSS balanced with frame generation gets you there. 1440p isn't ready on this chip as far as my initial testing is concerned, at least not without a settings compromise, and that's out of the scope of this current video. In the next video, I'm going through the full settings breakdown, every slider, what actually costs performance, what's basically free, and the one combination that the game doesn't tell you about. Subscribe so you don't miss that. And drop your GPU and laptop model in the comments. I want to see how this scales with different rigs. Also, I'll be covering the Rogue Ally Xeon Extreme soon, so if you have a handheld, watch out for that.